to our webinar on decoding labor codes, what they really mean for the social impact sector, right? I am Nandita, as Purnima mentioned, and I'll be your partner in crime for the next 45 to 60 odd minutes. I lead organization development and delivery vertical for Arthan, and it's a pleasure to be here with a room full of enthusiastic people who want to know more about labor codes and how these impact our own organizations, which are in their own unique space of landscape and journey in growth. Firstly, you will all be able to have a deepened understanding of the purpose and impact of India's four labor codes on social sector organizations. While these labor codes are more generic for every type of organization, whether it's private, limited, social sector, trust, but how these translate and what they mean in different situations for us in the organizations is something we will definitely share. Secondly, we will be summarizing the key provisions of each code in simple terms so that you know which code to refer to when you are going through different challenges. You should be able to analyze how these codes affect different employment types and organizational setups by the end of this webinar. Identify any compliance gaps and create a practical action plan through a toolkit, which you will receive at the end of this webinar. You will be able to download it and probably do a self-assessment on where your organization is currently. And we will also be able to apply gender and inclusion perspectives to your compliance efforts, which already exist, right? Now, before we dive deeper into labor codes and what do they mean for us, why are they important for any organization for that matter, let's try to understand how is this different from the labor laws which exist in India. So labor codes are comprehensive laws that consolidate and simplify dozens of older labor laws in India. So everything is cruxed into these four labor codes which we're going to talk about today. Their primary goal is to create a uniform and modern legal framework for employment, ensuring fair treatment, safety, and social security for workers across all sectors. Like I said, they don't just apply to social sector organizations, they apply to every organization. But what provisions mean for different type of organizations is what we need to understand. Okay. These codes are not just about compliance. It's not about saying we adhere to code on wages and hence we are compliant, but they actually shape the working environment of your organization by setting clear standards for wages, working conditions, even dispute resolution. Grievance is a part of the labor codes also, and social protection, social security laws. So by defining minimum standards and rights, these labor codes will help your organization create a safe, equitable, and legally compliant workplace. They directly influence your day-to-day working conditions. For example, the code on wages, it sets the minimum wage floors and ensures timely, non-discriminatory payment, which impacts how employees are compensated and valued. All right. Similarly, the Industrial Relations Code mandates for clear rules for conduct, discipline, and grievance redressal, which in return fosters a structured and fair workplace culture, right? The third code, which is the code on social security, actually extends benefits like PF, ESI, gratuity to more workers. And the latest reform includes gig and platform workers too. So it goes beyond gender and beyond anything else, which is why it promotes inclusivity and security for any type of worker, irrespective of full-time, irrespective of contractual. It promotes social security for every type of employment. And the last code is the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, which regulates your working hours, rest intervals, welfare facilities, even gender separate bathrooms, ensuring safe and healthy workplaces. So these codes collectively ensure that your organizations provide for fair wages, provide for a safe working environment, grievance mechanisms where every voice is heard, and there's a proper process which is followed, and social protection, which are all fundamental to a positive and productive work environment. So what you see on your screen is just an overview of these codes, essentially. There is a code on wages, which came into being in 2019, which oversees the key provisions on minimum wages, what does equal pay mean, and timely wage payment. Okay. Then we have the Industrial Relations Code, which came into being in 2020, with key provisions on standing orders, trade unions, grievance redressal. Don't worry, we'll talk about these more as we move forward. I will share some more highlights on what this could mean. Then we have the Code on Social Security 2020, which has key provisions on Provident Fund, ESI, gratuity, gig and platform workers. And the last that we have is the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020, with key provisions on working conditions, welfare, provisions, and contract labor. Okay, so it talks more about creating a better workplace and in a more confident manner for every type of employment. Now let's dive into each one of these and how each of these code consolidates multiple existing laws, making compliance simpler but also broader in scope. Okay. Okay. Now the Code on Wages 2019, one of the key provisions in this is on floor wage. So the central government establishes a national floor wage as the minimum benchmark, the minimum wage that needs to be given to every type of employee or worker, irrespective of the employment type. But the state governments have also set their own minimum wages based on the local cost of living, regional economic conditions, and industry standards for that state. These minimum wages are revised at the central and state level every 5 years, okay, to account for inflation and economic changes. So it ensures that no worker, regardless of location or sector, earns below the prescribed minimum. What this means for us in the social sector is that if you operate across multiple states in India, you need to ensure wage compliance in each state with the State's Minimum Wages Act. All right. For example, minimum wages in Delhi for somebody who is a semi-skilled worker, which means a graduate, will differ from those in Madhya Pradesh or rural areas. All right. So that is how the floor wage needs to be looked at. You can't just say that we comply with the Code on Wages 2019. You need to also look at the Minimum Wages Act for that state to comply completely. All right. The next key provision is on equal remuneration. Now, this is interesting because this is where your diversity angle kicks in. So, equal remuneration component actually mandates, as per the Code of Wages 2019, that there should be no gender discrimination in wages for equal work or work of equal value. It protects against paying women less than men for performing the same roles or responsibilities. What this means and how it translates to NGO sector and the social sector is whenever you conduct a wage audit or a salary audit or a compensation audit, whatever you want to call it, do bring in the gender lens in it to ensure that all your employees performing the same role receive the same pay regardless of gender. And gender here can also mean more than binary. So this is especially important given the sector's commitment to diversity, inclusion, empathy. Okay. The third key provision under this code is on timely payment. Again, very important because according to this code, wages must be paid before the last working day of each month. So it's as per the laws. Okay. Before the last working day of each month, the wages must be paid. And any unauthorized deduction beyond prescribed limits, like your statutory deductions for PF, tax, insurance, are prohibited. You need to have it documented and authorized by every employee that they're okay with the deductions being made. Any penalties or deductions which do not have a written consent are not legally binding. And any of your employees can go and say, this is against the labor code. So establish a robust payroll system with clear payment schedules. Ensure all deductions are documented and authorized. And late payments can actually result in penalties and damage the trust in your team. Okay. The last key provision that I want to talk about is coverage. Does the code on wages apply to all employees, regardless of their employment type? Yes, it does. Whether full-time, part-time, contractual, or temporary. This is the significant shift from older laws that exempted the higher wage earners on this. They only looked at the minimum wage earners. All right. What this means for us is that all workers in our organization, from field staff to consultants, fall under this code's protection, which has a cost and compliance implication for organizations, yes, especially where diverse employment arrangements exist. Let's now look at the Industrial Relations Code 2020. The first key provision, something I also said, was on standing orders. Now, what are standing orders? Standing orders, so that we all align on this, are documented rules that define working conditions, employee conduct, workplace discipline, and penalties. Okay, documented rules that define what should be the working conditions, what should be employee conduct, which is why most organizations have a code of conduct, workplace discipline, and penalties. So these standing orders should clearly outline expectations around attendance, performance, misconduct, and disciplinary procedures. which is why it is very important for organizations in the sector to develop a clear written policy manual. You might have a number of policies in place, but do you have a written policy manual or a handbook that outlines these norms? Chetna will come back for Q&A towards the end so that we're able to complete all the 4 labor codes. Right? So develop a clear written policy manual or handbook that outlines these norms and communicate these to all employees during onboarding. Make sure it forms a part of your induction. This reduces disputes and will provide clarity for both the management and employees. And yes, it is as per the Industrial Relations Code. It needs to exist. Second key provision in this code is the Grievance Redressal Committee. Now, for what this code states is that if an organization has 20, minimum 20 or more workers, a grievance redressal committee is mandatory. Okay, so this committee must include worker representatives and must resolve grievances within 30 days as a process. If unresolved, grievances escalate to conciliation. So having a GRC in place, if you have 20 or more employees, is a compliance issue for you. You might say, I have a POSH committee, an ICC, and ICC is different from a GRC. Not every grievance is sexual in nature, and hence ICC cannot resolve for every grievance which is being raised. So create a structured grievance mechanism with clear steps, timelines, and documentation. Ensure that this committee is independent, impartial, and includes worker voices. So one representative of the workers should be there. This builds trust and will help prevent conflicts from festering. Now, the third key provision in the industrial code is on the trade union rights. Okay, I know unions are very uncommon in many NGOs, right? Now, workers, according to this code, have the right to form, join, and participate in trade unions and collective bargaining. So, organizations, you can't restrict these rights or victimize workers for union activities. What this means for the social sector, because, like I said, unions are uncommon in many NGOs. We don't have this culture mostly is to be aware of the and recognize the right to organize collective bargaining, right? So maintain transparent communication with your employees, with field teams, address concerns promptly. It's more being proactive rather than reactive, and prevention is always better than cure. So build trust without triggering unionization in a way. All right. And the last key provision that I want to talk about is dispute resolution. Now, this code establishes a structured mechanism with defined timelines for resolving both individual disputes, which means dismissal, wage claims, salary issues, and collective. So, both individual and collective disputes form a part of having a structured mechanism. This ensures disputes are handled systematically rather than escalating into conflict. So, it will not reach your GRC. What this means for us in the social sector is develop a clear dispute resolution procedure. It might be a part of your code of conduct, handbook, manual, even GRC. It's okay to have it as a part of your GRC. Document all incidents and follow procedural fairness. Moving on, the next 2 codes. So when we look at labor codes from the social sector point of view, I would want to prioritize 1, Code on Wages 2019, 2, Code on Social Security 2020, 3, Occupational Safety Code 2020, and 4 should be Industrial Relations Code. Okay. But let's come to Code on Social Security 2020. Of course, one of the key provisions remains PF, your EPFO coverage, which is Employees Provident Fund Organization. Now, this coverage applies to all establishments with 20 or more workers. Okay. Earlier exemptions have been removed, which means organizations that previously did not contribute to EPFO must now do so. You have to do it, and you need to clear the previous year's arrears also. What this means for us in the sector is if any of your organizations have more than 20 employees, please register with EPFO and contribute 12% of employee salaries, which is your employer and employee contribution combined. This increases the operational costs, but also provides workers with long-term retirement security. Okay. Next key provision is ESI expansion. ESI is Employees State Insurance, which has now been extended to all districts. There are 740 districts that ESI is implemented and applicable in, and it is mandatory for all employees for hazardous work. It also now covers, ESI now covers gig workers, platform workers, and self-employed individuals in addition to your regular employees. What this means for us organizations is uh, if our employees operate in field settings, which or involve hazardous work, for example, water and sanitation programs, ESI coverage is mandatory for them. Okay. This coverage also provides workers with medical and disability insurance, not to forget. So ESI coverage important for everybody, including gig workers. If you have, um, uh, if you have employees working in field settings or in program teams, which is hazardous in nature in any way. Third is the gratuity key provision. Okay. The code uses a broader definition of wages for gratuity calculation, and it includes your basic pay. This was one of the questions also in the form, including basic pay, DNS allowance, and other allowances, which increases the gratuity amount which the employees receive upon retirement or termination. So basically, they've included not just basic pay as was earlier, but also DA and other allowances. So please, as organizations attending this webinar, review your gratuity policies. The broader wage definition may increase your liabilities, so budget accordingly and communicate these changes to your employees. Okay. And the last key provision is for unorganized or gig workers. Now, this code extends social security options to self-employed workers, platform workers, and gig economy participants. So it recognizes the growing informal workforce also. If in your organization you engage with gig workers or contract workers, please understand the social security options available to them. For example, ESI applies to everyone. So they will have to then enroll for you will have to enroll for an ESI for them. So understand these social security options available to them and provide guidance wherever possible. Okay. Moving on to Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, which is the last of the labor code we'll talk about today. The first provision is on working hours. All right. Now, according to this code, the maximum working hours are capped at 8 hours per day. Shifts must be regulated with adequate rest intervals, like breaks during the day, lunch break, and all of that. And rest days, typically weekly offs. What this means for us in the social sector is please monitor your field staff schedules to ensure they don't exceed 8 hours daily. Otherwise you are defying the code. Okay. So monitor your field staff schedules to ensure they don't exceed 8 hours daily. Document the shift patterns and ensure rest days are respected, especially during high pressure periods like project implementations, field campaigns. So ensure rest days are respected at that time. The second key provision is on welfare facilities. Now, according to the Occupational Safety Code, organizations must provide for gender separate bathrooms and locker rooms wherever possible. Access to drinking water should be there. First aid kits and trained staff and adequate seating for breaks. These all form a part of welfare facilities. And these facilities actually ensure basic dignity and health standards. So conduct an audit of your office and field facilities. We're not saying that you can have gender separate bathrooms in fields also, but ensure there are proper instructions which say how to have hygienic bathrooms, how to use them. First aid kits are there. Your employees in the field are trained on these. Address these gaps urgently. This is especially important for organizations with women staff working in field or remote locations. Okay. The next provision is on leave entitlements. So now what this code does, Occupational Safety Code does is, it has two different type of leave entitlements. Okay. Adults are entitled to 1 day of leave per 20 days worked, so which comes to approximately 18 days annually. And adolescents, which means people in the age group of 15 to 18 years who work as volunteers, are entitled to 1 day per 15 days worked. These leaves can include casual, sick leave, or earned leave. So ensure your leave policies meet these requirements, meet these minimums. Document the leaves taken, balance remaining leaves. It's a very basic entitlement, but understand the difference between leave entitlement for an adult vis-a-vis an adolescent. And common compliance gaps can emerge over here. So be aware of this. And the last key provision is on contract labor. Okay. Now, according to this code, contract labor is prohibited in core activities unless justified by specific circumstances. Where used, Organizations must ensure full compliance with labor codes for these contract workers, including wages, working hours, safety, and social security. So review your use of contract workers. If they perform core functions like program delivery, community engagement, justify the arrangement or convert them to permanent staff. You will, as it is, have to extend your benefits to them. Ensure equal treatment and compliance for all contract workers. Okay. I'll summarize all of this. I know I've been talking a lot. So I'll summarize this to make it easier for all of you. The key takeaways are five broadly. One, wages and remuneration. So ensure competitive, equitable, timely wages across all employment types, right? Secondly, have fair processes. Establish clear grievance mechanisms, which is, I'm again saying, separate of your ICC, and dispute resolution procedures. Thirdly, worker protection. Extend social security benefits to all workers, including gig and temporary staff. Fourth is safe workplaces. So invest in welfare facilities like first aid kits, training on self-defense, gender separate bathroom wherever possible, or a hygienic poster which says how to use a bathroom in how to use a common bathroom, right? Monitor working hours and respect rest entitlements. And last is inclusivity. Apply codes consistently to all employment types and use compliance as an opportunity to actually strengthen organizational culture. I know somebody mentioned compliance plus into culture. It is a way to strengthen your organization's culture. You know, these components are interconnected and these codes are also interconnected. So compliance with one code often requires actions that align with others, which creates a more holistic framework. Let's also see what does this mean for social enterprises like us and NGOs like us. Okay. What you see on the screen are different ways in which we need to look at these codes: nature of employment, hybrid work impacts, social security realities, gender and inclusion, contractual workforce. And I've also spoken about this a lot. Just want to highlight a couple of things while you read through this slide. A detailed breakdown of what each implication means for the sector. Stronger protection for frontline and community workers. Now, this code formally recognizes contractual, part-time, freelancing, consultants, gig workers, whatever the category you want to put them in, uh, who, to a lot of extent in the sector, are employed with us for digital outreach and field-based programs also. This means that more of our workers, community and frontline workers who are consultants with us, who are contractual workers with us, are now entitled to benefits like gratuity, social security, and safe working conditions. Okay. Of course, it's to improve fairness and dignity in employment. Um, but please look at it from also from the lens of having enough budget to accommodate for this. Okay. So now it doesn't matter whether they're a full-time employee or not. You will have to pay for gratuity and social security to some extent for them. Not all, but to some extent. Also, fixed term staff hired for project cycles. Fixed term consultants hired for project cycles now qualify for benefits after 1 year. So I'll help you decode this. There are fixed term consultants and there are extended term consultants, right? Fixed term consultants come for a certain years or months, let's say 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, right? Till the time the project goes on. After the project ends, either we terminate the consulting contract or we extend the consulting contract. For such consultants, earlier they would not qualify for benefits, but now they qualify for all employee benefits after 1 year of being in that consulting contract with us, closing the previous gap in protection for temporary employees. You might want to review your contracts again. Okay. Another important thing is that these codes now have introduced a one license, one registration, and one return approach, making compliance easier for organizations across multiple states. Okay, so for example, your standard wage definitions and clearer thresholds will help you budget more accurately for grants and CSR proposals, supporting better planning and transparency. Okay. Thirdly, I think something I do want to talk about is that they provide a clearer framework for diverse workforce models, which we have been working in the sector on. Now, we are a sector which relies on a mix of full-time staff, project-based workers, consultants, volunteers, specialists, you name it, we have it, full-time employees, extended term contracts. Now, the codes formalize entitlements and portable benefits for all of these groups, aligning with the sector's value of equity, inclusion, and empathy. All right. Another thing, so in summary, these labor codes actually require social sector organizations to rethink their people practices, role structures, and governance, ensuring that compliance is not just a legal obligation, but a pathway to building a fair, resilient, and impactful organization. Okay. So excellent to know about what you need to do, but what can you do? There's a difference between what you need to do and what you can do, right? How do you become compliant ready? What you see on your screen is a roadmap sorts. Somebody also wrote in the Meti code that we had shared, audit. So yes, conduct your audits. Perform a comprehensive review of HR compliance, contracts, review your current policies, practices, systems against each of the four labor codes. We will give you a checklist at the end of this webinar. You will be able to download it for your organization. Please, please, please assess yourself on this. Identify gaps between what you're currently doing and what the code requires. For example, are minimum wages aligned with state guidelines? Do all employees have written appointment letters? Are their job descriptions clear? Are all eligible employees registered with PF and ESI? Are you giving social security coverage to your consultants and gig workers, contract workers also? It's just some questions, right? Come to grievance mechanisms, right? Is there a documented grievance redressal process you have? If not, you know you need to put it in place now if you have more than 20 employees in your organization. Okay. So just some of the key areas which you might want to audit. Secondly, strengthen your practices. Update your contracts, yes, which will form a part of your larger once you do your audit, but also strengthen your practices. So document, update and formalize your HR policies. Document all employment related practices into formal policies. The manual, you remember, it is mandated as per the codes to exist. Put it in a manual. Many NGOs operate with informal or verbal agreements, which create a compliance risk. Make sure when you're updating your contract, there is an appointment letter and an employment contract. They are two different things. Make it clear for all employment types, permanent, contract, project-based, consultants, whatever. Ensure there is clarity on notice periods and termination procedures. Okay. When you're sending out the appointment letter or employment contract, include job title, include reporting structure if you don't already have it. And if you have it, just use this as a checklist. Salary breakdown, benefits, the updated benefits, leave entitlements, performance expectations, disciplinary procedures, each and everything outlined in these codes. Okay. Um, have your wage and compensation policy. Define your salary structures. Specify minimum wage compliance and annual review cycles. Uh, Clarify authorized deductions, whether it is PF, tax, insurance versus unauthorized deductions. Okay. Look at all of this as a process actually, and it's a huge list. Once you've done this, train your managers, not just your managers, train everybody in your system. Educate the managers more because not everything can route through the HR, not everything can route through the leadership. Your managers are the everyday touch points for your employees and workers. So educate your managers actually on legal and ethical employer responsibilities. They need to be aware on what is it that is legally binding so that if a worker comes to them, they have the right answers uh, and they act like your spokesperson. So train your managers and collaborate with donors. Engage with donors to secure compliance linked funding. Say we need to make sure that as we are legally compliant, and trust me, all donors are okay with it. We have done a lot of assignments where organizations have asked us to do benchmarking studies because it needs to go in a donor reporting. So yes, donors are also aware of this and they will be supportive of this. Before we move forward to the Q&A, I would request all of you to please scan this QR, give us your feedback. Once you submit the feedback, you will get a link to download the compliance checklist for each of these codes as an organization assessment. Yes, Anil, I'm looking at your question. Uh, Kindly clarify whether Maharashtra, yes, the Maharashtra shops and establishment, but please be very careful when you read the Maharashtra shops and establishment because this actually is for an NGO setup is not a shop or an establishment. So a lot of things in the shop and establishment will not apply to your setup. So it is so read it with a lot more granularity to understand because shops and establishments are defined separately than NGO branch office or an NGO working office. But yes, the Maharashtra Labor Code if you will download the list of the checklist, which you will get at the end of this. Yes, that's what I'm telling you, Anil. When you will download the checklist, I have also given on the last sheet a repository of government links which you can refer to. I'm trying to see more questions. Which terms of contract or for consultants attracts the applicability? Which part of the labor codes not applicable in Karnataka? Karnataka, Mustafa, will have a separate minimum wages act for sure. Labor codes, unfortunately, they don't apply to to a particular few states. They are more generic and hence apply have a pan India application. But for code on wages, please refer to the state codes law. Please look at the minimum wages which are as per the Karnataka state law. Okay. Do we need to register in SNE throughout other states as we have multiple offices? No, you don't. Again, Mohit, shops and establishment is separate from an NGO office. Please understand, an NGO office, when you look at different states, is more from, I'm not sure if you are into implementation and programs, but you will, it's not covered under the Shops and Establishment Act. So please do not refer to the Shops and Establishment Act for labor codes definition. Refer to the 4 labor codes which I have spoken about for labor code definitions and for ensuring that you are, aligning with the compliance over there. Please clarify if earlier contract employees already completing 1 year as of 21st November 2025. Does the gratuity 1 year new law would still apply in this case? If you're extending the contract, then yes, Fagun, it will apply. But if you're not extending the contract, then it will not. So one of the questions which we had received from somebody at the time of registration was, one gratuity rule is applicable now for fixed term employee, right? Which is what I was also talking about. The rule is effective from 21st November 2025. If someone from the current team leaves post 21st November, will this be applicable or will it be applicable only for new employees joining after 21st November? So the new gratuity rule, which is effective from 21st November 2025, applies to fixed term employees who complete at least 1 year of service, regardless of when their contract started. So if an employee from your current team leaves after 21st November 2025 and has completed 1 year of service, they will be eligible for gratuity under the new rule. The benefit is not restricted only to the new hires after that date. Okay. Please look at minimum 1 year of completion of the contract. Someone also asked that how are these codes different for private limited versus Section 8 companies? Now, for this, you need to understand what is the difference between a private limited and Section 8. Private limited requires minimum authorized share capital, must have private limited. These codes are not different for social sector or Sector 8 companies or private limited companies. The codes remain the same. What differs is how they will apply to different type of workforce for us and in different scenarios. Okay. Another question is, with new labor codes changing after the implications on a Section 8 company working for change, what are the implications on a Section 8 company working for non-profits? What are the fundamentals in payment and compliance needed for non-profit organizations? Okay. Now, what are its implications on Section 8 companies, non-profit companies? Section 8 companies must comply with the new labor codes if they employ workers, irrespective of their non-profit status. It does not matter. Most labor codes or labor laws, including your code on wages, payment of bonus act, gratuity, apply if the organization pays wages to employees. Please understand this. So these codes do not provide blanket exemptions for non-profits. Statutory obligations need to be met for all employees, even if you're a Section 8 company. All right. If ex gratia is given, which results in basic being less than 50%, does that affect PF calculation or only gratuity benefits? Interesting. Now, if ex gratia payments result in basic salary being less than 50% of total remuneration, then yes, it may affect your PF calculations because PF contributions are based on your basic salary plus DA if applicable, right? So it will impact your PF calculation, but your gratuity calculation is based on the last drawn salary. So a reduction in basic may lower the gratuity amount also. The new codes, however, specify that gratuity is calculated on the last drawn salary, which should ideally be at least 50% of CTC for full benefit. So yes, it will have an impact on your PF and gratuity calculation. Make sure that ideally, what I said, 50% of CTC hona chahiye, basic salary. Okay. How will the labor codes impact migrant population of India? Okay. Now the new labor codes, now, or these new codes, have limited coverage for migrant workers, especially intrastate migrants. Many smaller establishments employing fewer than 10 workers, which includes a large number of migrant workers, are excluded from several social security benefits. So the social security code might differ. Interstate migrant coverage is also reduced, with the threshold of applicability raised to 10 workers. Got it? So this may leave a significant portion of the migrant workforce without statutory protections. If you have less than 10 workers, fewer than 10 workers, then yes, the new codes have limited coverage for them. It will not apply to them, especially in intrastate migrants. Somebody had also asked on farm labor. Any positive implications of this change on farm labor? The new labor codes do not specifically address farm labor. They don't, as agricultural workers are largely excluded from most labor laws. Okay. However, if if the farm labor is engaged in establishment covered by the new codes, for example, agribusiness or organized farms, then they may benefit from the broader social security coverage only, and hence have a simplified compliance. But otherwise, farm laborers are not covered under, do not specifically come under the new labor codes because of the nature of their employment. For most traditional farm labor, the impact is minimal. Okay. And there was a question on the ESIC calculation, which was calculated on combinations of salary structure, is now calculated only on basic or basic plus DA. As per the new labor code. Is this correct? Yes. Under the new labor code, ESIC contributions are calculated only on basic salary, DA, and RA if applicable, collectively referred to as wages. Okay. Other allowances and bonuses are excluded from the calculation of ESIC. And yes, this is a change from the previous practice where multiple components were included. So, yeah, you're right in your question over here. I think with that, we come to an end of our webinar. Please feel free to reach out to me for more questions, to connect with me separately, and would love to have further conversations. Great. I think that brings us to an end of our webinar. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me on email. Would love to answer more questions, connect and understand what are some of the best practices. If you are stuck anywhere, feel free to let me know. Would love to guide. And yes, look forward to engaging more on further webinars with all of you.